in lesson 1, we spent a significant amount of time trying to figure out which equation to start with and which letter to get all by itself. Now, we determined that the best one to use is the one that has the 1 in front of the letter. That way you don't have fractions and all that good stuff. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch to nonlinear systems. That means that there's going to be an exponent involved, at least one. And in the very beginning of your assignment, there's a question. It's not multiple choice, but it's going to ask you to find or check if certain numbers are the solution to an equation. Now, here's how this basically works. You're going to have two separate equations. They're going to ask you to test some values. The values they're going to ask you to test are x and y values. So what you do is you essentially go into both equations and plug in those values. You make x equal 4 and you make y equal 3, and then you go through and you test whether or not it's going to create a true statement. And when you guys look at this problem, down at the very, very end, after they do all the math, you get 16 equals 16. And then if you do it in the second problem, plugging in x equals 4 and y equals 3, you get 9 equals 9. So since both scenarios are true, that means that it is a solution to the system. Okay, so 4, 3 is a solution. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples here, and I'm going to pretend this is the assignment. So on the assignment, this is going to be like choice A, and this is going to be choice B. So they're going to ask us, is it a solution? So again, it's not multiple choice. You have to test them all. So I'm going to go into this equation here. And for the first one, I'm going to plug in x equals -2 and y equals 3. So I'm going to go and replace the entire problem with parentheses anywhere there was a letter. And then I'm going to stick x equal to -2 and y equal to 3. So we end up with -2 plus 6. And the question is it really equal to 4? -2 plus 6 is 4. 4 equals 4, so that checks out. Now, before we go over here and circle the yes, you can't say yes until it checks out in both equations. So now I'm going to go and check the second equation. The second equation is 2x plus y equals -1. And again, that's the number in question. Is it truly equal to -1? So I'm going to take the x value of -2 and put that in the first parentheses. And then the y value is 3, so I'm going to put that in the second parentheses. So if I work this out, this is -4 plus 3 equals -1. -4 plus 3 is -1. And we end up with a true statement on both sides. So since this one worked and this one worked, the final answer is going to be yes. Now, if you have a nonlinear system means you have curves. So it is possible to have more than one solution. So in your assignment, the first few questions, I think it's problems 1 through 4, you don't just go until you find one answer. You have to test every single one because there could be multiple answers. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to example 2, which I'm calling example B. And I'm going to test the same thing. So I'm going to start off with the first equation. We'll call this equation 1. And we'll call this equation 2. So we'll start with equation 1. So I'm going to put in parentheses plus 2, parentheses equals 4. So the question is it really going to give us 4? This is the new x and this is the new y we have to test. So I put -1 and +7. So you have -1 plus 14 equals 4. -1 plus 14 is 13. And 13 does not equal 4. So as soon as we get one answer that's a no, the entire thing is a no. So if the first one doesn't work, you don't even have to test the second one, because the only way it could work is if they both say yes. If the first one says no, well, then we don't have to test the second one, and the answer is automatically a no. Okay? So now we're going to switch gears because that's how this works on the assignment. In the assignment, they're going to have you test a few answers. I think 1 through 4 has four numbers you have to test. And then when you get to the next question, or the next set of questions, now you actually have to solve. So in lesson 7A, we learned which equation to start with. So in my strategy here, I'm going to stay away from the exponent if possible. So I'm going to start with the bottom equation. Now we're going to still use the same strategy. We're going to try to go after the number or the letter that has the 1 in front. So I'm going to start off with 2x minus y equals -1. And I'm going to go ahead and try to get this y by itself. Now I'm going to do this kind of in a weird way though. Instead of subtracting the 2x to get it to the other side, I'm just going to add the y to the other side. That's going to cause this to cancel. And if I wanted to, in the same step, I can get rid of that -1, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to go like this. And then I'm going to add 1. So I'm going to add 1 to the other side. So I have 2x plus 1 equals y. And if it really bothers you that the y is over here by itself like that, you can go ahead and get rid of that and put it on this side. It doesn't really matter. So there's my box. So now what we have to do is we have to go into the second equation and we have to go in for the letter y and substitute. So the second equation is going to look like this. It's going to say x squared plus 4x minus parentheses. Remember that this green arrow over here, this thing is telling me where to put the parentheses. So I'm going to put parentheses. I'm going to say it's equal to 7. Then I'm going to take what's in the box and I'm going to put it in the parentheses, just like we learned in lesson 7a. So it's 2x plus 1. And then I'm going to, remember we talked about this in class, after you put the stuff in, it's distribute, combine, and solve. So we're going to distribute this -1 right here, because right here we have this we're plugging it up here. We have a -1 in front of this y, so that's where this -1 comes from. So if I distribute the -1, it gives me -2x minus 1. Then I bring the rest of the stuff down. And that's going to equal 7. I want to combine as much as I can so I can shorten the problem. So x squared plus 4, 4 minus 2 is 2. And then -1 equals 7. Now, because this is equal to 7 and I have some exponents involved, I actually have to get the 7 over to one side, because anytime there's an exponent, I need it equal to 0. So this is x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Now, once our problem is equal to 0, we should try factoring. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to -8, but they combine to 2. So the list for -8 would be 1 and 8 or 2 and 4. In order to make a positive 2 out of that, it's got to be the 2 and the 4. So we got to stick a 2 here and a 4 here. And in order for it to be a positive 2, this is going to have to be a positive 4 and a -2. So now that we factored it, that means that we've separated our x's. So I have x minus 2 equals 0, and then x plus 4 equals 0. Factoring breaks down your x squared into 2 separate x's, so then you can solve for each one. So if I just add 2 to both sides, I get one result of 2. Hold on a second, I don't like how I wrote that. And then if I subtract 4 from both sides over here, I end up with x equals -4 for my second result. Okay, so now, just like before, when we found our first answer, we go back and plug them into the box. The thing is, we got 2 answers, so we're going to have to plug it in twice. So in the box, I have 2 parentheses plus 1. And the first answer was x equals 2, so I'm going to plug a 2 in there. And that's going to tell me the answer for y. So when x is 2, that means that y is equal to 5. So my first solution is going to be at 2, 5. Then I do it a second time. Y equals 2 parentheses plus 1. And the second answer was -4, so I stick a -4 in here. And if I do this all in the calculator, that's going to give me y equals -8 plus 1 is -7. So the second answer is going to be -4 for x, and then -7 for the y. Now, these are your 2 final answers, and how can you verify that these are correct? You can always go to Desmos. So if I go to Desmos, I have -4, -7, and 2, 5. That is exactly what we got here. So Desmos is going to be our way to verify our solutions. And you can see that one of them is a parabola and the other one is a line. So it's possible to get two solutions. Okay, next one. So this one now has two exponents. And like I told you before, don't start with the one that has exponents. Start with the other one. So we're going to start here. So if I start with x minus y equals 1, the problem that I'm going to try to solve is I want to try to solve for this x because this one has a positive 1 in front. So I'm going to start by adding the y to the other side. So I have x equals 1 plus y. So there's my parentheses, or my box. So now I have to put that stuff from the box in for the x into the other problem. So I'm going to put that right here. And remember, my arrow shows me where to put my parentheses. So I'm going to have parentheses squared plus y squared equals 25. The stuff from the box goes inside. And guys, this 1 plus y, they're interchangeable. You can put it as y plus 1 if you want, which I'm going to do because I like it like that. Now, if you remember first semester, there's a shortcut to work this part out. There's a formula, so I'll do the formula off to the side here. If it's a plus b squared, the formula is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Now, if this makes no sense to you, write it twice and then multiply it out. But I'm going to use the formula because I'm lazy. So I have y squared. To get the middle, you multiply the a and the b spot. So y plus 1 is y, and then you double it. So this is going to be 2y. And then for that last spot, you square the b, which is 1. So this is going to be plus 1. And then I bring down the plus y squared equals 25. So I can combine like terms here. If I combine the y squared and the y squared, that's 2y squared. And then plus 2y plus 1. And that's equal to 25. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get the 25 over to one side. So I'm going to subtract 25. I'm going to subtract 25 to here because anytime there's an exponent involved, it needs to equal 0. So we can try to see if we can factor it. Okay. Now in this question, you're going to notice this has this 2 out in front. Now I want you to also notice that all three terms are even. So that means it's the GCF. You can just divide out the 2. That's going to make our life a whole lot easier. So now this is a simple ABC. So it's y squared plus y minus 12 equals 0. And now we can just factor the stuff that's in black. So I have to come up with two numbers that multiply to 12. So 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And it has to give us this middle number right here, which is a positive 1. The only one that I can make a 1 out of is 3 and 4. So it's going to be 3 and 4. And it's going to be, let's see, it's a positive 1. So that means the 4 has to be a plus and the 3 has to be a minus in order for it to work out to be a positive 1. And then the 2 goes in front. And this stuff is all equal to 0. Now, I don't care about the 2 anymore. All I care about is the y. So I'm going to take y minus 3 and set it equal to 0. So that means that y is going to equal 3. And then I'm going to take the y plus 4 and set that equal to 0. So if I subtract the 4 over, that's going to give me minus 4. So there's the two answers that I need to go plug back into my box. So if y is equal to 3, I'm going to start off with x equals 1 plus parentheses. I'm going to stick in the first result, so it was 3. So that means that x is going to equal 4. So in the first answer, I'm going to have 4 for the x, and I'm going to have 3 for the y. Then I'm going to go do it a second time. I'm going to go back to the box. So it's x equals 1 plus parentheses. And I'm going to stick in the negative 4. 1 plus negative 4 is negative 3. So x equals negative 3 is the second answer. So that means in parentheses, we'll have negative 3. And we got that when we plugged in negative 4. So here's my two answers. And if I want to verify, I can always go to Desmos. So my two answers, negative 3, negative 4, and then 4, 3. And that's exactly what we got. Now I know what you're thinking. Mr. Para, why don't we just do this in Desmos? That's because this is college algebra and you have to be able to do some stuff by hand. So on the test, there's going to be one question without exponents that I want you to do by hand, and there's going to be one problem with exponents that I want you to do by hand. If there's any other ones, like extra ones, you can just use the graphing calculator to solve it. So you should have enough information now to solve all of the questions from the assignment. And I'm only going to have you do the front page. So on problems 1 through 4, that's the one where you test them. You just plug them in and verify that it gives you the same number on both sides. Remember, because there's curves involved, you could have more than one answer. So check all 4 answers on problems 1 through 4. And then I'm going to have you try 6 different questions where you have to substitute. And that's it. So hopefully you spend your time wisely and you work on today's assignment. I'll be back tomorrow so I can answer more questions.